Brownie Newman is with us, our chair of the Buncombe County Commissioners. Thank you for coming and spending your time. So I think you're going to enlighten us about this issue maybe down here.
Yeah, that's the code. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here today. I was glad to see Commissioner Parker Sloan join as well. And so Parker and I, along with Commissioner Amanda Edwards, are the three members of the County Commission that serve on our Affordable Housing Subcommittee of the County Commission. So we spend a lot of time thinking about affordable housing issues in Buncombe County, and but I'll go through the slides, and we want to talk about the two different bond referendums that will be on the ballot for voters in the local elections in November, and early voting starts, soon in October. So we'll talk about both of them. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the affordable housing bond, partly just because I'm talking to a group of realtors. So this is all about the housing market, right? So I want to talk a little bit, kind of dig into a little bit more detail around the affordable housing bond and how we kind of developed the proposal that's on the ballot, which the voters will weigh in on, and what we hope that can be accomplished by it if it's approved by the voters in November. And first of all, I just want to say how much we appreciate the realtors supporting the bond referendums. We're optimistic about this, but you never know how these things are going to go until you add up all the votes, right? So we really appreciate the realtors' support for these two bond referendums. The Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce, their board of directors also had several presentations about this, asked a lot of great questions, did a lot of great due diligence on it. They've also endorsed it. Of course, there's a bunch of different conservation and environmental groups that obviously support the open space bond. And there's a bunch of different housing related organizations that are endorsing the housing bond. We expected those kind of groups to be supportive since they sort of are, but having groups that represent broader constituencies in the community, like chamber and realtors, I think really, really helps us be positioned for hopefully a good outcome in November. So do I just say next slide, or how do we advance the slide?
You actually have a clicker there?
Oh, okay, clicker. All right, great. All right, the slides are pretty short, so just go through it. If people have questions, if you want to, feel free to just ask. But I think I'll get through this pretty quick, so we have plenty of time to talk more about it once we're done. Got it upside down. Yeah. All right. So we've got these bond referendums coming up. There's two different bonds. The affordable housing bond is for the question is to approve a $40 million bond referendum for affordable housing, and then the open space bond question for the voters is $30 million. So if they're both approved, it would be a $70 million. They're separate, but combined to be $70 million. All right, and as you all know very well, affordable housing is not a new challenge in Buncombe County. It's an issue that's been with us a long time, but it's also one that we've really seen. A lot of this challenge has only grown in the last few years, both in terms of the home ownership prices as well as rents increasing in Buncombe County. So it's an issue that has only accelerated in terms of its importance to the community in recent years. And there's a lot of great existing efforts going on to address these. There's a lot of great projects going on. It's not like the community hadn't made this a priority in the past, but we clearly need to do more because we're currently not going in the right direction. The Buncombe report, probably a lot of y'all have heard this. This is a group that does these periodic assessments of the Asheville, Buncombe County real estate markets. And they've been doing this for a long time. So they're a great group, very credible, very detailed reports. If you want to really kind of dig into all the details of the regional housing market, the Bowen report is great. So their most recent report indicated that when we think about affordable housing, the single greatest need we have in our housing market is for affordable rental units. And their market analysis indicated that Buncombe County needs over 5,000 additional affordable rental units. With the affordability, the general rule of thumb is that for a person who's in the workforce, they don't want to be spending more than a third of their income on their housing costs, and that's their mortgage and their rent plus their utilities. Because you really need the remainder of it to meet all of your other basic life necessities. So for people who are spending more than a third of their income on housing, that's considered a cost burdened household. And that's an individual or a family that is, would really be struggling to make ends meet. So we would need over 5,000 additional units to not have cost burdened households in Buncombe County. We're not going to get to that number anytime real soon, but that's the theoretical gap that's in the market. So our subcommittee on the county commission, we spent the last more than a year looking at what are other what are other cities and counties across the state doing to address affordable housing? Because this problem is not unique to Buncombe County. All of the major metro areas that are experiencing a lot of growth all have affordable housing challenges. So part of what we found was actually very encouraging that some of the other cities and counties around the state are actually making far more progress in addressing their need for affordable housing than we have in recent years in Asheville and Buncombe County. Based on this, and they have some strategies we'll talk about the strategies, but based on that, the county commissioners approved a recommendation from our committee to set a goal of building 1,850 new affordable rental units between now and 2030, so basically over the next 7 years. In addition to the affordable rental goal, we want to support construction of an additional 400 affordable home ownership units, 400 moderately priced homes and apartments, as well as support 500 emergency home repair projects. So these are mostly projects, mostly with senior citizens, some with households with folks who have a disability, but these are emergency home repair projects to basically help lower income households, mostly seniors in our community, be able to safely stay in their own home. A lot of these projects, it might be like your furnace is blown up and it's not safe. That needs to be replaced, or you can't live in the house. So it may be $7,000 or $8,000, but it keeps a person in their home and hopefully also helps preserve that housing stock so the house doesn't continue to deteriorate and we lose that house from the housing stock. So if we meet these goals, meeting these goals does not mean we've solved our affordable housing issues in Buncombe County. They will remain, but we would significantly reduce the gap. And for the first time, we would really be moving in the right direction in terms of the affordable housing gap in the community, rather than just seeing it grow worse and worse every single year. So it sends us in the right direction if we can do this. All right, so we did this research, we set these goals, and then we started thinking more about, the county invests in affordable housing every year through our annual budget. We have this affordable housing services program that's used to support, good projects. Maybe it's Habitat for Humanity. Maybe it's a multifamily project that Mountain Housing is building. So we already invest in this space, but to meet these goals, we will need a larger investment from the public sector to kind of, really scale this up. So we started looking at different financing strategies. Coincidentally, last fall, the Trust for Public Land, which is an open space focused national organization, they reached out to us kind of out of the blue, honestly. And they said, we got this grant funding from this environmental charitable organization. They're interested in promoting open space bonds in the Southern Appalachian region. They're specifically interested in Southern Appalachians. What about Buncombe County? People there really, really care about the environment a lot. So would the county be interested in potentially looking at an open space bond in Buncombe County? So we said, I think our constituents might very well be interested in something like that. But the other big concern we have in Buncombe County is around affordable housing. So would Trust for Public Land, because Trust for Public Land said, we can do a feasibility assessment for you. We've got some grant funding to pay for it, so it won't cost the county anything. We said, could you do a feasibility assessment for an affordable housing bond referendum along with the open space bond referendum? And they said, we would like to do that. So they helped us do a feasibility study last fall, looking at the feasibility of doing a bond referendum around these two different issues.
So Brownie?
Yeah.
So what do we mean here exactly by bond? And what are the expectations from the city or the county if we get a bond?
Yep. So I will drill into this a little bit more.
Okay.
So hang on just a little bit more, and we will dig into some of that. So they did this kind of technical feasibility assessment, looked at because these have to be voter approved bonds, part of it. So you can't just do these. You basically can only do these when there is an election that's going to be held, right? Because then it gets put in the ballot with all of the candidates for various local, state, federal office. We weren't sure if we had time to do an affordable housing bond referendum on the 2022 elections based on it was already, less than a year away last fall. So they looked at all these issues, came back and basically said it is feasible and outlined some of the details for how that will work. So if I don't answer some of the particular details you're interested in, let me know. So the recommended funding sources that came back was the use of a general obligation bond, would have to be voter approved. The county, Buncombe County, has the highest credit rating possible for a unit of government. We're AAA credited organization. Part of what that means for us is that when the county borrows money through a bond referendum, we can borrow it at the lowest interest rates available anywhere in the country. We actually have just as good of a credit rating as the United States federal government. So we can borrow money very cheaply. And when we borrow debt all the time to fix buildings, maintain buildings, maybe we're building a school or something or a library. But when we do a voter approved bond referendum, do a general obligation bond, we can borrow the money at an even lower rate because it places the county fully guarantees that bond. So when the lender comes in and lends it, it has the full faith and credit of the county government behind the repayment of it. So we get the most favorable financing terms for and it has to all be used for capital projects. It can't be used for any overhead or planning and things like that. It's all capital projects. All right. So when we looked at what other communities are doing around the state, one of the things that really stood out to us is that Durham and Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Raleigh and Wake County were really embracing this previously minimally utilized strategy in the affordable housing sector referred to as the 4% low-income housing tax credit program. So when projects are structured in certain ways that guarantee long-term affordability, multifamily affordable developments can qualify for this affordable housing, this national affordable housing tax credit program. The main way affordable units have been built in Asheville and Buncombe County over the last 20 years, there's two different programs. And I'm going to get a little bit in the weeds, but not too much. So there's two different programs. One is called the 9% program. It is a competitive process that developers have to compete for. For a county the size of Buncombe County, we're only going to get one of those projects each year. Like Mecklenburg County might get 3 and 4. If you're a rural county, you might only get one every 4 or 5 years. But for Buncombe County, we basically get one of these once per year. These projects are limited in the size that they can be, and they average only around 75 units. So that's been the main source of producing new affordable rental units in Buncombe County for many years, is the 9% affordable housing tax credit project gets annually approved and built. In the city and county, we support those projects. They usually need some gap financing, and we support them. But we, at that rate, 75 units per year, we're just going in the wrong direction. The need is for much more than that. There's another tax credit program called the 4% tax credit program that is not capped like the 9% program. So it is theoretically unlimited. You could do multiples of these projects. They can also be bigger than the 9% projects. The reason it's been minimally used in the past is that the tax credits generated by the 4% program generate less equity than the 9% credits. Like the credits just work slightly differently. So it requires a bit more, typically local funding or some other financing source to supplement it for them to be financially viable. So in the past, not many people did it. But as the affordable housing issues have gotten more challenging, more cities and counties started saying, hey, that's where we need to go, because we need to be doubling or tripling the amount of units we're building each year. So let's get into the 4% space, even though it might require a little bit more local funding. For every dollar of local funding that gets put in, the tax credit program will put in $2 to $3 of equity into it. So it's very effective in terms of leveraging financing to communities. So, and just as a quick example of like the differences between these, like in terms of the power of this, one project people might have heard about, an affordable housing development, the Haywood Street apartments project that's 45 units near downtown, city, county, Dogwood. We're all supporting it. It's a great project. It's going to, nice design, it'll work well. But because that project wasn't structured to utilize tax credits, the total local subsidy the 3 city, county, Dogwood organizations put into it, over $100,000 per unit, right? So that's like if we have to spend $100,000 for every affordable unit we build, there's just not enough money in this community to build our way out of it, right? So another project we're looking at, this is a project that's currently being planned up in Weaverville. Great project. It's 168 units. If you live in Weaverville, call the town council and tell them you love this project because they still got to get some approvals from Weaverville. It's 168 units, all affordable, very nice design, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, great amenities, gym, pool. Like this is a nice project. They required less than $10,000. They asked for a low interest loan from Buncombe County at less than $10,000 per unit. The costs are leveraging all these 4% tax credits to the project. So it really provides our community a much more scalable financing strategy to meet the needs we have. So we want to really embrace this. Case study in the 4% projects. So from 2018 to 2020-21, Wake County, where Raleigh is, used the 4% program to build over 3,000 new affordable multifamily units in Buncombe County, more than 1,000 per year. Of course, Wake County is much bigger than us. But if you adjust for population, like we've been building about 140 units per year. Using this program, Wake County is producing more than twice as many affordable units compared to where we're at in Buncombe County right now. So this is a chart that our staff put together at the county that shows like the pipeline of 4% projects. It's kind of small, but like the list on the left in green, that's the pipeline of affordable multifamily projects that Wake County was able to build and support between 2018 and 2021, over 3,000 units. So you can see, like, once they were like, let's do this, you could really start scaling up your construction of new affordable units. Durham County is also doing a lot. Down here in Buncombe County on the kind of lower right, like we did one of these a couple of years ago. I think it was a senior rehab project for one of the downtown senior housing apartments. But we want to do something that looks more like what Wake County is doing because the need is large. All right. The other thing the county's doing, we're not just wanting to just say, hey, let's just it's not just about spending more money. We're trying to bring creative strategies to this big need in the community too. The county owns a lot of property in Buncombe County, most of which we didn't acquire in the past with affordable housing in mind, but just for various ways the county has acquired different properties over time. We own a bunch of property downtown. So we're looking at redeveloping these existing county-owned properties, not just for affordable housing, but with a focus on affordable housing. As you all know, the high cost of land is one of the biggest challenges with making housing more affordable in the community. So where we own free land, we've already paid for it. Hey, these could be great. Some of these could be great sites for doing projects, and we can contribute the property to the process. Besides downtown, one of the other big ones you might have heard about, the county owns about 130 acres out on Ferry Road. It's a beautiful property. If you drive down I-26, as you get close to the French Broad River, you've looked at it 1,000 times. Beautiful property, a couple thousand feet on the French Broad River. We're going to create a major new public park out here. Over half the property will be preserved as open space with new trails and greenways. But there are parts of the property where the topography is pretty moderate. That could be where we could do some good housing at the site as well. So it's going to be both some new housing with a focus on affordable and moderately priced homes, and there'll probably be some multifamily, there'll probably be some single family, some small multifamily, as well as a great new park out here. So we're excited about this property. We're going through a planning process on it right now. So let's see. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the open space bonds here real quick too. Just a few slides on this, and then I'd be happy to kind of open it up for more questions. So the county also has an energy and environment subcommittee of the county commission that kind of looks at those issues, makes recommendations to the county commission. They kind of gone through a similar kind of like assessment of, how are our current programs working? 18% of Buncombe County is currently in some sort of protected conservation status. We have Pisgah National Forest, the Blue Ridge Parkway runs through the county, different land trust groups that preserve different properties, either through acquisition or placing a conservation easement on the property, whereby the landowner still owns the land, but they've agreed to conserve it for the future. So our Energy and Environment Committee made a recommendation for the county to preserve an additional 6,000 acres of land in Buncombe County, also between now and 2030. So over the next 7 years, preserve 6,000 more acres, which would bring Buncombe County's total protected land base up from 18% to about 20%. And, of course, we're not just preserving land at random. They have a set of criteria based on, prime farmland, different natural areas that have special ecological significance, things like that. We're strategically targeting different types of properties and areas of the county that we really want to focus the conservation resources on. Watershed protection is very important. So the conservation bonds would go to support achieving these goals. So $30 million. So the affordable housing side is a little bit bigger, $40 million. And of the $30 million, we're basically thinking about it in 3 tranches. $10 million of it would be used for supporting the county's conservation easement program, which is very successful. And we have a waiting list of property owners who are interested in participating. Most of these property owners are willing to donate a lot of the value of their land. So, they're willing to kind of donate part of their property values to this voluntarily, just because they care about their land, they want to see it conserved for the future. So, and then $10 million of it could be used for actual acquisition of properties that come up for sale over the coming years in Buncombe County that are in key locations where we might want to add them as a new park, or maybe it's near some other existing protected property. It'd be good to add to it. So part of it can be purchasing property to preserve. Part of this for conservation easements. And then we have a county greenways plan. And so 10 million of it would be used to implement the high priority projects that are pretty shovel ready to get those projects across the finish line. Like the Woodfin Greenway on the French Broad River is up there. And for folks who are familiar with the Inca Heritage Trail out in Inca Handler, those projects that are kind of ready to go, it would provide some of the funding to go ahead and get those constructed. And there'll still be some funding to do some others as well. All right, almost done. The ballot language that you'll see on the ballot, this is at the very end of the ballot, from what I understand. So don't vote for all the candidates and then turn over the ballot, and because this I think is on the back side of the ballot. And the language that we had to use for the conservation and affordable bonds, this is all basically dictated by the state. Like we don't have much discretion in how it's phrased. The General Assembly adopted these laws that basically say, this is what you must say. So the language is really clunky. Like this is not the kind of language that any of us would use if you were like talking to a neighbor or something about conservation and affordable housing in the community. It's kind of legalistic. But anyway, I just wanted to show it to you because this is what it will look like when you see it on the ballot. And it's fine, and it will allow us to use the funds for all the things we're talking about now, but it's just kind of clunky. And this is the language for the housing bonds. So this is what the language will actually look like on the ballots. And then I'm almost done, I think. So in terms of transparency and oversight of how these funds are to be invested. So by state statute, when bond funds are approved, legally, they can only be invested in the purposes that are specifically stated on the ballot language. So this is not the kind of thing where if in the future, some different set of county commissioners are elected and they have some different ideas about what they think is important in the budget, these funds must be spent by law only on the purposes that are approved on the bond referendum. So the county commissioners also adopted a resolution that requires the creation of a website that will track in real time how all of the bond funds are invested. So people will be able to see all the different projects that are getting approved as the funds are dispersed. And we also voted to create a community oversight committee. The committee will not make recommendations on how the funds are spent. We kind of already have some other processes and advisory boards to do that, but their job is just to do one thing, which is just track how the funds are spent and to make sure that every single bit of it is spent exclusively for the purposes stated in the bond language, to basically kind of confirm, like, yeah, this is what we said the funds are going to be spent for, and they will. So they'll have 5 members, 1 member with a background in banking, 1 with a background in accounting, 1 person representing the affordable housing community, 1 person representing the conservation and greenways community, and then the Asheville Area Chamber of Commerce will also appoint 1 of the members. So that's how it'll be made up. Assuming they pass, we'll in November we'll go ahead and actually. Importantly, we are actually taking applications for this now. So if you know anybody who may be interested in it, please, think about applying or encourage them to send in an application. You can do that through the county's website. That's it. Okay, so those are the slides. I don't know if I answered everything you were thinking about in terms of like how the bonds will work. I'm happy to answer any more questions on that or any other questions that folks.
So my understanding is that that's a bond, a really low interest rate loan. So how is the bond to be paid back over time, and who is paying it back?
Yes, that's right. So assuming the bonds are approved, we will go out and issue the bonds sometimes early next year. Even with the higher interest rates that are out there in the world these days, with the county borrowing it through general obligation bond, our expectations that this will be, well below 4% when the county issues the debt for that. So it'll be a 20-year general obligation bond, and if both of the bonds are approved, so the full 70 million, for the median for a homeowner in Buncombe County where the home is a median value, average median value. So half the homes are worth more, half are worth less. So the average home, the homeowner would pay $32 per year would be the amount that property owner would pay per year to finance both the bonds. I think the housing bond, if only it passed, it's $18 a year. The conservation bond, if only it passed, it's $12 a year. But if they both pass, it's $32 a year. Yeah. And they would be, and the idea is that those funds would be fully expended over a 7-year period between now and 2030 would be kind of a window to invest the funds in the capital projects. Yeah.
So you borrow it all at once up front, and then is that a fixed rate for the 20 years?
It is a fixed rate for 20 years. They do not have to incur, they don't necessarily have to accumulate all the dollars all at once. They will get approved for it. But since it is going to be invested over a period of time, we won't be paying interest on the full amount all from the start. But as the projects are funded, the interest rates would begin to apply as the funds are dispersed.
I just wondered, interest rates are going up, so I wondered if you lock in that interest rate soon for all 70 million.
That's a good question. We can follow up with our finance director to see if there are, if for the projects in the later years, is there an opportunity to further negotiate on that? Because, theoretically, the odds of it being lower at that time are certainly pretty likely. Good question.
You mentioned long-term affordability.
Yes.
Is that only baked into the rental units, or do you plan to keep the for sale units affordable long-term, and if so, how?
Yes. So on the projects on the affordable rental units, the minimum period of affordability is 30 years. And the county often negotiates with the development groups that we partner with that are actually planning and developing the projects for longer periods of affordability or even permanent affordability. So on the home ownership projects, those are usually projects where we are partnering with like Habitat for Humanity or other organizations that are focused on building new homes with affordable housing, affordable home ownership as the goal. And all those organizations that we have partnered with in recent years all have some mechanism whereby, and they're all a little bit different, but it basically follows whereby, the new homeowner can sell the property in the future, right? So they can certainly sell it. And in most cases, the property owners are putting in some kind of down payment to the property, even though it's it's set up to be affordable. So putting some down payment funding into it. And depending on how much of the down payment funds they put in, there is like an equity sharing formula. So if the property owner sells the property in the future, the homeowner is able to benefit from some of the appreciation in value and equity that they've got in their home. But because there has been a community investment in helping them get into the home, a portion of the resale of the house goes back into like the counties or Habitat's new construction funds to build more housing. So the property owner doesn't sort of walk away with like a windfall. They get some benefit from it, but it's split with reflecting the community's investment in it as well to help build more affordable homes in the future. That's the way most of them work, and I think that's how we envision.
Nobody's been able to solve that problem on how to keep long-term affordable housing stock.
Yeah.
They're basically chasing that wheel of new construction affordable because it's only one time.
Yeah. I mean, there are other ideas that are out there. Part of it would be to just kind of strictly limit the resale of properties, how much they can be resold for in the future, or to require that they can only be sold to an income qualified family. So those are options to look at. It's not a policy issue. I think our group has really spent a lot of time on that particular question. If bonds pass, maybe we will. part of the challenge is if a property owner, homeowner purchases a property, if they really can't benefit from the appreciation of their the value in some meaningful way, like, do you really own the home? I mean, how's that different than renting in a way, right? You're just, so I don't know. It kind of begs the question: is that really home ownership? So I feel like some kind of split of benefiting the property owner, recouping some of the value to reinvest in future affordable housing. To me, that feels right, but it's
Trying to maintain the ladder for people to rise out of poverty or just middle class circumstances as well.
And if you can't financially benefit from your home ownership, then it's not that much of a benefit over renting. You're correct.
Yeah, you just can't get kicked out. Although I guess the bank can still kick you out, right? So not your landlords, the bank just be doing it, it's still different than these. So yeah.
So that we can be sure we're educating people properly, is there a place that we can access either these slides or easily access all the information you've presented here today?
Yes. So the county website, the Buncombe County website has information about both of the bonds, but of course, Parker and I we're county commissioners, but we're also elected officials, and we're just, so we can certainly, openly advocate for and encourage people to vote for this. The county government itself cannot advocate for people voting one way or the other, but it can provide just accurate information about it. So there is technical information on the county website about how the bonds will work. The community campaign that's kind of come together to advocate for this, it's called Better with Bonds, also called Buncombe Votes Yes. They've got a website that has a lot of great information on it. So really, I would encourage people to probably, if you're talking to someone, encourage them to go to that website.
The Better with Bonds.
The Better with Bonds website, and that it will kind of, it's making the case for why these are both good bond referendums. And most of the groups working on it, both conservation and housing groups and the realtors and chamber, have all endorsed both. Basically say, we're a growing community. The need for affordable housing is very urgent. But of course, we also just don't want to develop every last acre in Buncombe County. Like we want to preserve many places for forever. So the fact that these two issues have kind of been paired together, I think a lot of people feel like that's kind of a cool aspect to it.
Thank you.
And that website's got those goals that Renee went through in the slide deck, as well as the YouTube video of the meeting at which we approved them. If you really want to
Excellent.
dive into a 40-minute video of Brownie talking through.
I'm curious.
It's really good.
I mean, historically, there's been issues with, housing developments and problems with concentrating affordable housing in specific areas. And the way that it sort of seems like that's what you're describing here. And I'm just wondering what you would say to that.
That's a great question. So, I think we've learned a lot, like as a country and as a community, about like the wrong ways to develop affordable housing. Obviously, like kind of the classic negative images that come to mind are like the public housing developments in national, right? Where like the government like went in and like destroyed all these neighborhoods through like urban renewal, and then put these families in these like neighborhoods where it's like basically is this concentration of poverty, right? So the kinds of projects that we are supporting, offer a spectrum of affordability. So some of them are like, deeply affordable, or, maybe it's, families who are on disability or something and really don't have, live on a fixed income that's very modest. But a lot of it's more like workforce housing, right? Where it's, it's a little bit below market rate, but it's for people who work in our service sector, work full time. But, it's a spectrum of affordability. It avoids that. And it's also, so it avoids that concentration of poverty. I mean, the average incomes that you would see in the developments that we support are like dramatically different than what you would see in like public housing developments operated by the Housing Authority in Asheville. So we avoid that concentration of poverty. We support projects with good design. So these projects, like they look like great places to live that anybody would find attractive. So I think we are recognizing like, yeah, we really did this poorly for a time, but like there's a different model that fits in very well with the community.
Yeah, I guess personally, I just think it would be nice if there was a greater percentage dedicated to pathways to home ownership. Personally, because the people who are really going to walk away with the money in their pockets probably aren't even people in this community building the developments and
Oh, I see.
you know what I mean? The developers that are going to come in and get the money and build the stuff. And I don't know. I'm just, that's just what occurs to me when I look at it as a realtor and as a homeowner. And I know how important that is to, like generational wealth, really.
I've got a thought that Harvey.
Yeah, I guess part of my thought to your question was it's like in our like 9-month attempt to create those goals that you've seen, we're really trying to cast as wide a net as possible to go at this problem. And so that's what tackling the rental crisis first and foremost. That's the volume problem that we have, the scarcity problem that we have that the Bell report shows us all.
Right.
But also going after rehab of existing housing stock and creating new single family homes and supporting, outside of the bond, just supporting, the voucher program and trying to expand that and expand our pool of landlords that will accept and use vouchers. So it's just, we don't have enough housing of all types, right? For all income levels, for people of means. We don't have enough housing for people of significant means in our community. We need more of all of it. And we're trying best we can, and would absolutely love your feedback on how best to tackle.
I'm curious about in looking at it. That would be my hesitation, I guess. But
I think, the home ownership piece obviously has this natural appeal, right? It's kind of like what most people aspire to, right? It's kind of this American thing, like we live in our home, and how people build equity. The real estate analysis that's done from the Bowen reports and others that show that this affordable housing rental gap though is so profound that we have so many households, and these are people working full time, but when you're paying 40 to 50% of your money in rent, you just can't start. You have to start saving some money, but if you can't start getting ahead a little bit, then the idea of I'm going to buy a home is not going to be realistic. So I feel like by closing this gap on the affordable rental piece, will position a lot of those individuals and families to much more realistically be able to kind of contemplate, hey, now I've got this stabilized, and I can start saving some money and thinking about how can I buy a home in this community. But if we can move that needle, I think in the future, the mix between the home ownership and the rental might be much more evenly split. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we move on from that, and to piggyback on that, within the developments you're supporting, you might have already said this, but it's a lot of information. What percentage is your goal to offer that to lower income or median income, types of affordable housing within the developments?
So on the rental ones, or on the home ownership, or both?
Maybe both. Yeah.
So on a lot of the rental stuff, there's kind of this spectrum of people think about the affordability based on area median income, So a lot of the affordable rental is kind of focused on setting the rents so that they're affordable for folks who are anywhere from 30% to 80% of area median income. If you look at the rent levels that are allowed for a tenant at 80%, they're still pretty substantial. They're just a little bit below kind of the market rate, right? Or just, but then the 60 and 80, the 60s and 30s are much more deeply affordable. So it's kind of that spectrum in those ranges of affordability. And the same thing kind of applies to the home ownership side. When we think about a term affordable housing, we're usually thinking about that 30 to 80% AMI section. That is, we mentioned in the goals, a lot of people have pretty good jobs in this community still. It's finding a place that you can afford to purchase. Not easy, right? So we do have this goal around what we're describing as moderately priced housing as well. And there's 500 moderately priced homes that we want to support too. And I'll be honest, we're still kind of that piece is a bit more of a work in progress than the others, because work around affordable housing, there's all these well-established programs kind of all around the state. Everybody's wrestling with this. But the idea of how does a community want to support the production of more moderately priced homes is actually we're not seeing as many models on that. So it's something that we have endorsed, but still working on okay, exactly how will we develop that piece out. So, but we think it's important because it's there's a lot of people very much affected by the affordable housing issues in the community, even who have, pretty good jobs. And we feel like they need, we need to be thinking about that part of our community too. Give any ideas?
Well, I guess my question was also within the developments that you're supporting, what percentage of those homes would be available to those?
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Homes?
Yeah. Sorry.
So I still got a lot of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. It's really, most of these projects, the county's not the one originating the plans. On the county-owned properties, we kind of are. So we own the properties. So we've brought in some smart, talented people to help us kind of think about what kind of developments make sense there. So, and we're still working on it. Like Ferry Road, if I had to guess today, we haven't made final decisions, but just based on like the commission discussions, my hunch is that, and there might end up being, it's over 100 acres of land, right? 130 acres of land, maybe 50 acres developable. There could easily be, 400 to 600 units built out there. So maybe a third of them are like really affordable, a third of them moderate, and maybe a third of them we do market rate. Like if I had to guess, just based on the feedback I've heard from the commission, it might look something like that. A lot of the nonprofit and for-profit affordable developers we work with will oftentimes do like a mix of like 50% affordable, 50% market rate, things like that. I think everyone kind of sees that, like just, you want to have a mix of incomes that's going to contribute to more healthy neighborhood.
Part of what you're saying is like, yeah, but how many of the units are actually going to be available to people that are trying to rise out of that position?
Right. Well, yeah. Just like you were saying, I don't think concentration of poverty is anyone's best interest.
Yes, but at the same time, just doing 10 or 15% affordable, like the needs are so big, like
It's
so many places have like zero affordability. That like where we can get some, like it needs to be a healthy percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what else?
David's been holding.
Oh, Dave, sorry.
We got a statement and a question.
Yes.
Okay. So your board of directors has voted to support this issue.
Yeah.
And subsequently, we got a $15,000 grant from NC Realtors to support it. And that's great kind of stuff. And so anyway, so that's great. But we had to go in front of the committee at the state level, and there was a little pushback, and this is your point you mentioned a minute ago about bundling.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, everybody's for affordable housing, but okay, what's going to happen to our property? I mean, you mentioned that you want 6,000 additional acres, Well, if I remember correctly, the city got some bond money 5 or 6 years ago. A big part of that was to be for down payment assistance program. And here we are 6 years later, he got jack. You know what I mean? So I guess there was some concern that you're going to go out and buy up or conserve all the developable land. So we're kind of doing one thing on one hand and another thing on the other. Also, and I heard about the oversight committee. I'm going to assume that's the safeguard here that we actually get, because in the ballot itself, it doesn't say you're going to do 6,000 acres. It just says you have the ability. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know. Yeah. Some people might say, "Hey, you're investing funds to both build affordable housing, and you're investing funds to preserve areas from being built with affordable housing. Like, are you schizophrenic or what?" So but I think we're not. I think it's just sort of walking and chewing gum at the same time, right? Like this community knows that we have this huge need for affordable housing. Most of these projects are going to be focused on infill development sites, areas with existing water and sewer infrastructure, on transportation corridors, and most of the conservation projects. So we're going to certainly not invest the conservation dollars on like our prime development sites where we need affordable housing and other kinds of economic development. Much of it's like out in the outlying areas of the county where we still have like really functioning working farms and farming communities, steep slopes, the outlying areas of the county that we don't want to see all overdeveloped with sprawl type development, but not the areas that would be like our key locations for meeting these important goals and other kind of economic development that we see. We're doing this comprehensive plan right now in the county. And part of what we're really just pushing our county planning department and staff on is like, we need to identify, we're seeing the forecast for 70,000, 80,000 new people moving to Buncombe County by 2050. We really have to recognize, sure, the areas that we want to preserve, but where are we going to focus that growth in a way that's going to work well and still be a county that we all want to live in with that. So it is definitely trying to do both at the same time. But we like, that's what we want.
We certainly are all for it. There was just questions come up on the state level. So
yeah,
we got the money. So
was that their pushback? Was the preserving on the one hand versus the
kind of, and it was like, like inventory. Just take it from inventory. There's do we not have anything left to sell because you?
I see.
One of the interesting things from the polling that was done. So there was part of the feasibility study when Trust for Public Land did that. They had some grant funding, so they went out. They did some pretty sophisticated polling in the community because we don't want to get all the brain damage on this, right? And raise all this money and then lose by some huge margin. So we wanted to at least see that there's like an openness before going down this path. So the polling looked very positive for both of them. the open space conservation bonds polled the strongest, and kind of across demographics, across the county, it was widely supported. And it's just such a beautiful area. People who are moving here, like, do you want to preserve these beautiful mountains? Like, it's almost like a rhetorical question, right? Like, almost everybody said yes. I think the affordable housing one, even though it's a widely recognized need and challenge, like, it is a little bit more of a complicated issue, right? Like, how exactly do you do that? And, are we going to build these developments that we end up not liking in the future? Because it looks like, are we going to do the same? Are we going to make the same mistakes we made, in decades past? So one of the things that's interesting, though, is that in the polling, when they did the polling, half the time they would ask the open space question first, and then the affordable housing question second. And then the other half of the respondents, they would flip it and ask the affordable housing first and the conservation bond question second. Like, would you vote yes or no based on everything you've heard? And the person who kind of did the polling said, normally when you do these polls, it doesn't make any difference which one you ask first. People are going to answer them the same way. But in this poll, they're like, something that's never happened before, like, it's pretty rare. When they asked the open space bond question first and then asked the affordable housing question, people were more supportive of the affordable housing bond. And I think that's because, like, if people just hear about affordable housing first, that's all they've heard about. I think this question, like, are we going to overdevelop Buncombe County? I'm worried about development. So maybe I'm not sure. But when people hear, like, there's a plan coming forward that's going to preserve a lot of the places that really need to be preserved. Now, are you supportive of affordable housing? Now that you kind of know that, people are like, yeah, we need that too. So it's kind of interesting how the pairing of the two issues, we're hoping it will build like kind of more community support, because they know that these are both needs and we don't just do one or the other. We kind of gotta kind of try.
But that was presented on the ballot as the open space first, and then
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, actually.
Hey, this is yours. Totally,
But they're right next to each other, so they'll find out really fast.
Yeah, that's a good question.
The other point you brought up, what mechanisms are in place to make sure that this money gets put to use in a timely manner?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time frame? You have?
Yes. Okay. It has to be spent over between
The first,
2030, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be spent over 7 years. On the conservation one, I'm really not too worried about it. We have this like waiting list of property owners who are eager to participate in the conservation easement program. So I think there won't be a problem to invest in this. And on the affordable housing, I will say, like, we spent a lot of time looking at how the city bonds work, right? And I think they've done a lot of good things. But I will also say I think we have learned a lot from how they did it, and what Wake County, Mecklenburg, they all did housing bonds too. And I think there's a lot of lessons to learn about what's been successful and what's not been as successful as you might want it to be. So there's room for improvement. And I think we feel like these strategies we have are going to produce a lot more units than what we've seen produced in recent years. And a lot of it, we've got a great development community here in Nashville. There's great, most of the projects that are built in our area are kind of developed locally and things like that. There are a lot of really talented affordable housing developers around the state. I think to meet the goals, really, we probably want to see a mix of like supporting our local developers who work in that space, as well as attracting some of like the best and brightest who are working on some of these kind of projects in other areas to really have the best outcomes. Have some, frankly, some healthy competition between them. I think we'll make sure the taxpayers get the best value for our investment here.
Well, and I would also hope that things would be green or
For sure.
environmentally forward looking.
Absolutely.
If you talk about conservation and then you pave hundreds of acres and, then it's sort of like mixed results, but.
Absolutely.
Isn't there some kind of meeting or vote coming up that's going to deal with that piece of property where the Inca clock tower is? That's coming up pretty soon, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's in the city. It's in the city limit, so it's in their zoning jurisdiction.
we have no zoning authorities over that.
Right.
But yes, the developers, it appears, after lots of rumors and kind of false starts, it appears they're moving forward with building something in anticipation of a tenant coming in.
is it the same one that built that bridge?
So the bridge that some call a bridge to nowhere, I would never do such a thing. is partly funded by the county and the Appalachian Regional Commission and DOT, and it is there ready to connect Smoky Park over to Sandhill Road and connect all of the residential and the future commercial development by the Bond Tower. And
In the Hakon, like economic development project.
that's the word I had, Hawkeye.
Yeah, recently.
Yeah.
The new manufacturing facility over there, just this Canadian company came in. Goes to them, but
Yeah,
there was like
and the Greenway.
in the Super Bowl Greenway, there was like a warehouse project that was planned for that. Has that project died and it's something different?
Yes, the warehouse distribution center, which I think was only rumored as Amazon, which I probably assumed it was, didn't pan out. But there's a new
Yeah,
plan.
some new stuff going
Yeah,
on. So
I think
maybe
the
everybody can
property
pay attention
is
to that.
it's one of the challenges with it. I mean, it's a great property in so many ways. I think the restrictions and covenants on the property mean you can't do any residential there. So it has to be kind of a pure commercial development, which makes it a lot harder, right? I mean, if you could do if you could do a really mixed use project with residential, it would be one of the best sites in Buncombe
Yeah,
County, you know?
sure.
The main thing we've said is like, you gotta leave the tower. Whatever you do in
Yeah.
the city, you gotta leave the tower.
Yeah.
So,
People are gonna be
we will
upset.
all be murdered.
Yeah.
People looking at that.
Is the Ferry Road property the same property that was bought for that brewery several years ago?
Yes.
Property. Okay.
It is.
So.
Yeah.
Back to the benchmark, other than having to spend it in 7 years, we've seen the city run out the clock on things. Do you guys have any way for the public to sort of hold you accountable to why are these projects not happening?
They're gonna happen.
Well, that's.
He did the elections. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we you know, we're the main way we procure these projects are through doing like RFPs. Like we'll say like, hey, if these pass, like here are our goals. Like we want to build all this the new home ownership, all these new affordable building units. We want to do these tax credit projects. So, you know, bright developers of, you know, Buncombe County and North Carolina, like bring us your best ideas so that, you know, and here's how we're going to score them. Like it needs to be good locations, it needs to be good design. Like when we score them, so we kind of will pick the, you know, what we want to see is a robust pipeline of proposals so that we're not just stuck picking what comes forward, but hopefully like the best ideas out of many that we can pick from. Say we want to do these. And so we meet these goals well ahead of schedule and don't just have to say yes to everything, but have, you know, are able to pick the very best projects that come forward. So we've been spending a lot of time just like even just, you know, reaching out and engaging with folks in the development community to say, hey, the voters have to do this first, but we feel good about it. And when they do, you know, bring us good ideas, both for the county owned properties and, you know, go out and be innovative and creative and bring some good projects forward.
Now, I feel like I'll add a couple things. There's that oversight board that Brownie showed that will point people to that experiences any lens. A lot of those people will like outlive our political careers in the community is like serving on these boards to oversee the funds. I think the other part of your answer is like the wide net I was talking about of like trying to solve this problem. I think is like part of the way that we hope, and this is just a theory, we hope we'll advance this quickly. And so I don't want part of the answer to be like we're just not going to do what the city did, but I think part of it is like they established these goals and passed the bond, and they kind of waited for the phone to ring, right? And so we're going to see some of that happen as well, where the development community will come to us with applications based on our goals. And we've already seen that. We've seen developers from out of state come to us like that Weaverville project. So that's occurred. But we're also going to do kind of top-down development efforts on county-owned land and other places to try to land the plane as, you know, build the plane as it's taking off and really meet these goals in a timely manner. Yeah.
Okay, one last question because we're running into something else here.
Okay.
So are you sufficiently staffed to take care of all?
We will. We looked at the not currently, but if the bonds pass, I mean, we have looked at a specific staffing plan to carry this out. So we have been building up our community development team because we actually just needed some more people to do what we're already doing. So it's a strong team, but if the bonds pass, we will need to add some additional project management and financial management staff to oversee and implement all of this. So we've got a plan to do it if they pass. Yeah. Well, thank you all again for the chance to be here today. Thanks for supporting it. So talk it up and Get your yard signs and,
Yard sign,
celebrate. You want to,
Brad, thank you.
Good to see you.